Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, May 30th, 2025. This week, the devil of the Ozarks has escaped. An OnlyFans model seeks revenge in Cleveland, and a sexy cult gets its day in court. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Yes, super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner on.
That James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter, James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And welcome back to True Crime This Week with me, your host, James Renner. That's the James Renner bell. Hey, as you know, True Crime This Week brings you all the true crime news you might have missed during the week, distills it into nice little morsels for you, nice little nuggets to ingest at your pleasure, which sounds really gross now that I say it that way, but hey, I'm here every Friday morning, except for next week. I am taking a week off. I will be in London next week at CrimeCon UK. It's a convention for true crime podcasts and writers, and if you're a true crime addict, you probably know about this anyways. True Crime Denver happens in September, but next week is True Crime London. I'm going to be overseas, across the pond, as they say, eating some fish and chips and mushy peas, and it'll be fantastic. So if you're in the area, come on over, hang out with me. So I will see you in 2 weeks, but don't go yet. This is like the craziest show in a long time. There's some weird stories this week. But before we begin, as always, I want to thank my buddy Walter for running the camera. Walter, as you know, is stepping away from running Doge to focus on his podcasting duties. Thanks, Walter. Let's get to the top stories. Headline: The devil has escaped and may be hiding in the Ozarks. Last Sunday, former police chief Grant Hardin, known as the Devil in the Ozarks, escaped from an Arkansas prison and remains on the run, according to the Associated Press. To say this man is dangerous is a little bit of an understatement. It's kind of like when Hannibal Lecter put on that guy's face at the end of Silence of the Lambs and ran away. Kind of like that. Not long ago, Hardin was the chief of police in the small town of Gateway, near the Arkansas-Missouri border. He's been described as very, very smart, but the guy, he's got a screw loose. On February 23rd, 2017, he shot and murdered a man named James Appleton, who worked for the town's water department and was the mayor's brother-in-law. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder last October, or October of that year, I should say, and was sent off to serve 30 years in prison. But wait, it gets worse. When Hardin became a felon, the state got a sample of his DNA, which is procedure, and then the DNA hit on a cold case. His DNA profile matched the profile taken from an elementary school teacher who was raped in 1997. For that crime, Hardin was given a 50-year sentence. Since Hardin is 56 years old, that's essentially a life sentence for him. Apparently, Hardin had other plans. Last Sunday, Hardin somehow obtained a law enforcement uniform and, pretending to be an officer, just walked up to the security gate and a prison guard allowed him to pass through. Nobody noticed he was missing for a half hour. By that time, he was in the wind. The prison is located in the Ozarks, a vast swath of undeveloped, rugged backland filled with meth and hillbillies and lots of caves. There are around 2,000 documented caves in the area, actually, and Hardin knows the area well. It's going to be a while before they find this guy, I think. Hardin's only hope is to make it all the way to Canton, Massachusetts, where he could blend in with their police department and nobody would notice. You have to hear about this story out of Cleveland that happened like 20 minutes away from the studio here. It's so weird. I honestly don't know what I think about it yet, or if justice was served at all. I'm going to start with what happened this week and work back from there. On Tuesday, 35-year-old Chelsea Perkins pleaded guilty to killing a man named Matthew Dunmeyer in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park in March of 2021, according to Cleveland.com. Chelsea was accused of walking with Dunmeyer into the woods and shooting him once in the back of the head before fleeing the scene. Since the murder happened on federal land, the FBI got involved. They found DNA on Dunmeyer's body that matched Chelsea's DNA profile. They found a gun that matched the bullet that killed Dunmeyer in her backpack when they searched her home. Pretty open-shut case. As part of the plea, a U.S. district judge will sentence her to be somewhere between 20 and 25 years in prison. That's going to happen soon, now that she's pled guilty. But there's more to this story. Chelsea is a former U.S. Coast Guard member who left the military to become an adult film actress. She eventually started an OnlyFans account under the name Selena Savage. Sometime around 2017, she crossed paths with Dunmeyer, and things did not go well. In 2017, Chelsea reported that Dunmeyer had raped her. She pled for the Virginia Beach police to do something about it, but they told her they didn't have enough evidence to charge him with anything. So she waited. Then, in March of 2021, she messaged Dunmeyer to see if he wanted to see her again. And the trap was set. They met in an Airbnb in Cleveland. The next morning, she lured him to the park and shot him dead. Hikers found his body 3 days later. It was a carefully crafted revenge plot, and it just so happened to inspire another. After Chelsea killed Dunmeyer, and while the FBI was still trying to piece it all together, Dunmeyer's mother, 54-year-old Tommy Lynn, turned vigilante too. On November 5th, 2021, Tommy Lynn disguised herself as a UPS driver and traveled to Washington, D.C. to confront a completely different and innocent woman who she believed killed her son. She shot the woman, but luckily the woman survived. Police responding to the scene chased Tommy Lynn and stopped the car she was in. That's when Tommy Lynn turned the gun on herself and died by suicide. Dunmeyer's father was also in the car. He ended up being convicted of being an accessory to a crime and served 3 years in prison. A man commits a rape years ago, and the fallout ends up killing or imprisoning everyone connected to it. This is the most Shakespearean shit I've ever seen. What a story. That is crazy. And what do you think? Is justice served now? Should she get 20 to 25 years? I don't think I agree with that. But what a weird case. You guys like cult stuff, right? There's a crazy trial going on in federal court in Brooklyn right now that is spilling all the tea about what goes on inside a cult known as One Taste, which is kind of like a Buddhism but on ecstasy. The defendants are One Taste founder Nicole Daedon and former head of sales for the cult Rachel Cherwitz. They each face a charge of conspiracy to commit forced labor and face 20 years in prison if convicted, according to the San Francisco Standard. One Taste has been described as both a cult and a pyramid scheme. The religion offers a pathway to wellness and enlightenment through orgasmic massage. During daily yoga and relaxation sessions, women were asked to submit to others stroking their genitals for 15 minutes in order to reach nirvana. 15 minutes? What are we, 25? Anyway, the testimony this week has been steamy. One Taste's former IT guy, Christopher Hubbard, testified about how he helped lure an investor by arranging a Wizard of Oz-themed sexual experience where the investor followed a yellow brick road to a bed as the sounds of a tornado played. Former employee Rebecca testified that the head of sales, Cherwitz, believed that a drop-off in profits at their New York branch was due to sexual tension between her and a man named Max. So Cherwitz ordered them to have sex, which was quite awkward because Rebecca's friend, who was also present at this meeting, was already in a relationship with Max. Rebecca was also convinced to pay $12,000 for a coaching session she couldn't afford. During one orgasmic meditation session, Cherwitz stroked Rebecca, but told her that her orgasm was broken. That's sad. Other members testified that they were required to have sex with investors as part of their duties. Cult leader Daedon also required her assistant to have sex with her boyfriend and walk him around on a leash. The trial continues next week. In related news, I need a cold shower, so I'm going to take a short break. Lots more to come, and the stories just get more incredible from here. I'll be back with more True Crime This Week in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
Welcome back to True Crime This Week, brought to you by BlackBerry. Do what you love. Love what you do. A Northern California man who was sentenced to 378 years in prison got some good news this week when a judge overturned his conviction, according to the New York Post. 58-year-old A.J. Dev was released from prison May 23rd following this ruling. He had already served 16 years in prison after being convicted of sexually assaulting a minor, but evidence surfaced recently that suggests the girl made up the story in order to seek revenge. Let me unpack this a bit. Dev was an immigrant from Nepal who worked in California as a water engineer. In 1998, he and his wife took a trip back to Nepal, and while they were there, they decided to adopt a 15-year-old girl. She came back to live with them in Davis, California. In 2004, the girl's boyfriend broke up with her, and she blamed Dev for the breakup. Shortly after that, she accused him of having sex with her when she was still a teen. Based on her testimony, Dev was convicted of 76 counts of sexual assault and related charges. But recently, 4 witnesses who were friends of this girl came forward claiming that she told them she had made up the claims because she was mad at him for the breakup. His defense attorneys believe racism also played a part in his 378-year sentence. A hearing has been scheduled for June 13th to see if the county prosecutor intends to retry him on these charges. Here's one of those stories that make you question the nature of the universe. Last weekend, a man in East Shoreham, Long Island, went out to uncover his pool for the Memorial Day weekend, and he discovered a body floating in the water. Now, this man was no stranger to dead bodies. In fact, he was a seasoned detective for the Suffolk County Police, according to ABC 7. This detective, who has not yet been named, was part of a task force that was hunting for a fugitive named Matthew Zoll. Zoll was a 23-year-old man who was wanted for the stabbing death of his 61-year-old father, a crime which occurred in Rocky Point last November. Unfortunately, the young man seemed to disappear into thin air after the homicide. While he was fleeing the scene, Zoll crashed his car and continued to run on foot. That was the last anybody saw of him until the detective tasked with finding him uncovered his pool. The clothing on the body matches what Zoll was last wearing. Police believe it is in fact Zoll, but are awaiting DNA tests to confirm. How crazy is that? That's nuts. It's weird stories this week, right? It must be like a full moon. I don't know. 45-year-old Josh Klinghoffer, the former guitarist for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, will receive no jail time for the 2024 vehicular crash that killed a man crossing the street in Alhambra, California, according to CBS News. Klinghoffer played with the Chili Peppers from 2009 to 2019 and has also played with Pearl Jam and Jane's Addiction. Last March, according to a civil lawsuit, Klinghoffer was driving his black GMC Yukon with no license plates when he struck and killed 47-year-old Israel Sanchez as he was crossing the street. A video of the accident that captured Klinghoffer moments before the crash showed him on a cell phone or similar device. To Klinghoffer's credit, though, he did not flee the scene, but immediately stopped, called 911, and waited for the victim until police and an ambulance arrived. Sanchez died 3 hours later due to blunt force trauma. Klinghoffer must serve 1 year of informal probation. He must also pay restitution and serve 60 days of community labor. You know, not for nothing, but I served more time on a contempt of court charge when I called a sitting judge a lousy drunk. True story. By the way, I was telling the truth on that. So, anyways, he gets no jail time for killing this guy. August 3rd, 1987, Trinity County, California. Kay Adams, a 48-year-old schoolteacher, goes missing. Her husband, Nicholas, came home that day to an empty house. His wife had vanished. He found her purse and glasses in her car, which was still parked outside. 3 months later, a strange package was sent to the sheriff's office in nearby Humboldt County, according to SF Gate. The parcel contained skeletal remains as well as a map. Police used dental records to link the remains to Kay Adams, and the map led them to more remains in the woods. Their working theory was that a hunter had found the remains and for whatever reason did not want to be directly involved with the investigation. Or perhaps it was her murderer. Strange case, but why is this news? I'm glad you asked. In February 1993, 100 miles from where Kay's remains were located, part of a human skull was found by a man walking the beach at Trinidad Head. Recently, police submitted the skull for testing in hopes that they would finally identify the remains. Our genealogy friends at Othram got to work on this case and discovered that the skull also belonged to Kay Adams. They released their findings this week. So who abducted Kay? Who sent the remains to authorities? And how did her skull end up at a separate location 100 miles away? The investigation continues. Let's jump over to weird news, shall we? Remember last February when someone at the Office of Housing and Urban Development hacked the TVs in the cafeteria and showed a video of convicted felon Donald Trump kissing Elon Musk's feet? Well, a whistleblower came forward this week claiming that the person responsible for the video created it while he was on the clock, which could make the prank a crime. The identity of the prankster is not secret, though the person's name has not been publicly reported. Authorities were able to track it down to a member of the Housing and Urban Development Union, but have not released their name as the investigation into the incident is ongoing. Union President Dr. Ashaki Robinson denied his people had anything to do with it and said it was a, quote, transparent attempt to attack and retaliate against the union for engaging in lawful activity to advocate for our members and federal employees nationwide, end quote. Meanwhile, the video of Trump smooching Elon's feet continues to make its rounds on the internet. Director Quentin Tarantino hailed its production value and said he found it surprisingly easy to masturbate to. Over to pop culture. This is an easy pick this week. It's Cold Case Tylenol Murders. Are you watching this? It's on Netflix. It's a 3-part investigative series. It's about the Tylenol murders that occurred in 1982. I was just 4 years old at the time, but I remember growing up and being, learning about this. This is it's a crazy case. 7 people died in and around Chicago because somebody was taking the Tylenol extra strength capsules and putting cyanide in them. And then people would go home and take it and just die in moments. A whole, half a family died because of this. And they never caught the guy. But there is there's a really well-known suspect in this case. His name's James Lewis. He's never been interviewed until now. And he's interviewed for this documentary, and he's so creepy. I don't think he actually did it, personally. I think he was kind of an opportunist. Definitely killed somebody else, though, it looks like, allegedly. Though, for reasons you'll see in the documentary, was never tried for it. So it's a great case. It's everything I like about true crime documentaries. It's well done. Go check it out. Cold Case, The Tylenol Murders on Netflix. And finally, the Cold Case book of the week this week is it's by Kelsey Grammer of Cheers, Frasier. A sad story, though. The book is called Karen, A Brother Remembers by Kelsey Grammer. Here's the write-up. Karen by Kelsey Grammer delves into the tragic story of the author's sister, who was brutally murdered at the age of 18. Kelsey was just 20 years old when his younger sister, a recent high school graduate, moved to Colorado Springs, where she was kidnapped by several men who had intended to rob the Red Lobster where she worked. They instead kidnapped Karen, raped her, and ultimately stabbed her to death. Through this memoir, Grammer poignantly recounts the memories of his sister and the impact her loss had on his life and family. With raw honesty, Grammer explores the profound grief and devastation that followed Karen's death, as well as the long and arduous journey toward healing. He bravely confronts the pain of losing a loved one to senseless violence, offering readers a glimpse into the complexities of coping with such a profound loss. Karen also serves as a testament to Grammer's lifelong journey with grief and his struggle to defeat the sting of death with the memory of a life filled with joy. The sting of death with the memory of a life filled with joy. Irreplaceable joy. In sharing his story, Grammer aims to help others who have experienced similar loss, offering solace and encouragement to cherish the love they knew, however brief, on their own path toward healing. The book is a moving tribute to Karen and the brother's love that survives her. Never knew that. So check it out. Karen, A Brother's Story by Kelsey Grammer. That is the news for this week. Holy cow, what a weird week. I am off to London. Hope to see you there at CrimeCon. If not, catch me in Denver in September. And in the meantime, in the words of the incomparable Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, we gotta get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.